Okay. 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 So. Okay. Yes, we are ready.
We have to do this?
I'm gonna do a special thing. I didn't create it. I saw it in another YouTube channel, and I thought it was a cool idea. I'm gonna read some things on your Wikipedia, and you're gonna tell me if it's right or wrong. And if you could please elaborate, that would be fine.
Okay.
So it says here that you create games for the Apple II, Dragon's Keep, Bob Abed, and Troll's Tale. What can you tell me about those games?
Well, I was working full time as a music teacher, and in the evenings I would go home and hack. I just taught myself to program, and I just worked on the computer every night. And within a space of 2 months,
Yeah.
I created 2 games. And within another month, I created a third game.
Yeah.
And we took them to a computer show, and people seemed to like them. And that was the start of my computer career. I wrote the game so that my son was 5 years old, he
Yes.
could play the games. And I thought, well, if he likes them, other people will like them, and they did. They sold well. And the biggest thing that happened was, besides us selling lots of copies ourselves, we found a publisher who wanted to sell many thousands of
Yeah.
copies, and we said that sounds like a better idea.
That's
I think,
better.
yeah. So,
There's something really interesting here. This says that your first projects with Sierra were Winnie the Pooh in the 100-Acre Wood,
Yes.
and Donald Duck's Playground, and
Yes.
The Black Cauldron, which is a movie.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, well, that guy has range, because he can do Winnie the Pooh and then Laser Sweet Larry.
for 2 years, I was basically Walt Disney software.
Really?
Yeah, because Sierra got the rights to the characters,
Ah.
but they had no one to write the games.
Yeah.
And so they had me write the games, and I found out that Disney liked the way I had programmed other things, the Dragon's Keep and Troll's Tale.
Yes.
And they said, well, just make a Winnie the Pooh game like that. And so I bought all the Winnie the Pooh books, and I drew out a map of the 100-Acre Wood, and I made an adventure game that taught kids how to move around and which way was north and south, east and west, and where things were hidden. And it was random every time they played. It would be different. And so it was a very successful product for Disney and for Sierra.
For Sierra.
And but then we realized that by making games with the Walt Disney name on them, Disney was making lots of money, and we weren't.
Ah.
They took a big chunk. We got a little bit that was left. Sierra's share was very small, as was mine. So we said, why don't you just keep your characters, and we'll create our own characters. We'll create our own games.
Okay.
And that's when Space Quest and King's Quest and Police Quest and Leisure Suit Larry all came about in that year right after the Disney software. So far, everything's true.
Everything's true.
Yeah.
We're going, okay. So this is something funny that I wrote here. It says, throughout his career, Lowe was known for his distinctive bald head, full beard, and considerable beer belly, and liked to call himself the world's oldest game designer.
That's still true.
That's true?
Yeah, I haven't seen anyone here who's older.
Did you talk to the Guinness World Records?
I should. We should do that and
should
see.
do that.
Yeah, it could. It's very possible.
You really don't know anyone older than you?
I have never met anyone who
Who
disclaimed.
who is a game
disproved that.
designer.
Yes, right.
Okay. In 1994, you moved with your family to Seattle.
Yes.
And supposedly retire in 1998. What that does mean?
It means that the market for adventure games fell through the floor. Back then, adventure games were a big part of Sierra's success, and Sierra was the victim of a hostile takeover by criminals who took the company away from the founders, Ken and Roberta Williams, and ended up destroying the company. At the time, the Williams were forced out. The Sierra had 28% market share in entertainment software, and a $1 billion market capitalization and 1,200 employees throughout the world. Within 5 years, there were 10 people left. They turned off the lights and locked the doors.
Wow.
It was terrible. It was very terrible.
It was a massacre. It was a massacre.
It was. It was. Do you remember those World War II movies when they would shoot the wing off a plane,
Yes.
and the plane would do this,
Yeah.
and eventually you knew it was going to crash,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
it
you
hadn't
knew.
crashed yet, but you knew it was going to go. Well, that's the way it was.
You knew it.
Oh hell
At a
yes! You
point
could
you
just see
knew.
it because what happened was when the thing happened, all the good people, the good programmers and artists and everybody looked around and said, "Let's get out of here."
Let's get out of
yeah,
here.
and so the
Yeah.
good people left, and the bad people stuck around, and
It's
eventually.
like a bomb there. And
Oh,
hey,
it was
get out of
terrible.
the way.
It was terrible.
Oh.
Yeah, so
I'm sorry to hear that.
yeah, that was a damn shame. So anyway, I took the opportunity then to retire and get out of game writing completely. So I haven't written a game in almost 20 years.
20 years.
Yeah, I fell off the wagon.
Okay.
You know that phrase?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I slipped, and about 5-6 years ago, I did a remake of Leisure Suit Larry.
Yeah, I know.
Called Leisure Suit Larry Reloaded.
Reloaded.
Yeah, and that was a great deal of fun.
Yeah.
But it didn't sell well. It was, it was a game that was perfect for the 80s.
Yes.
Not
for now.
No.
I understand.
Yeah.
So what can you tell me about Sam Suit undercover exposure?
Sam Suede.
Suede. Sorry for my English.
That's okay.
Undercover exposure.
Sam Suede, Undercover Exposure,
Yeah.
was a game that I tried to do about 12 years ago. We were very excited about it. It was an action comedy. We got a good team together. We built a good engine. We built a level or two that were completely populated and working. And we took it out to every major publisher and we showed it to them. We'd walk into the meetings and the guys would say, "Oh well, I know you, and I liked your games, and your games made me laugh, and nice things, right?" They said all nice things, and we do the demo. And when we were done, they would say, "Oh my gosh, what a great look at that! Really looks like fun. It's not like anything else we've got." And I would play that game. Most of the games I'm bored, but this game looks like fun.
Yes.
And then they would ask the giant killer question: "What are your comparables?"
Oh.
And in other words, why would that be important? Why do I need comparables? Well, because we can only give you money if you'll make a game like some other game that's comparable to this other game, but a little bit different. And I said, well, there aren't any games like this. There's no action comedies.
Of course.
And they said, yeah, well, then we can't fund you. And so we literally had a game that was fun and it was cool.
You
and
have a good, cool, fun
designed well and written, and we went home. We shut it down and got nothing. Those two experiences convinced me that I'm fully retired and I'm going to stay that way now.
Oh, well. In November 2007, you were the guest of honor at Alternative Party in Helsinki, Finland.
Yes, that's
and
true.
And you played the saxophone live with David Hasselhoff.
No, not with David Hasselhoff. With the David Hasselhoff Big Band, which does not include David Hasselhoff.
Oh.
It's a guy with a laptop computer and a drummer and a guitar player.
And the band called themselves
They
David
called
Hasselhoff.
themselves that.
Oh,
But they
I
don't-
thought that maybe David Hasselhoff was
No.
singing like Freddie Mercury or
No,
something
when they
like that.
when they told me this, I said, "This is perfect. That's the perfect joke." I've appeared with the David Hasselhoff Big Band,
Yeah, you
which
were-
is not big. It's not a band, and not David
No,
Hasselhoff.
no, not that. Okay. Let's
Yes.
talk about that. It says that the series had its origins in Sierra's earlier soft porn adventure,
Yes.
a 1981 text adventure created by designer Chuck Benton.
Yes.
The story and basic structure from that game were reused for the first Larry game.
Correct. The idea was that we had this game,
Soft porn
soft
adventure.
porn. When we got the chance to use the Disney characters,
Yeah.
for some reason, Disney didn't want to have Mickey Mouse in the same catalog as a game called soft porn. And so they dropped soft porn.
Yeah, oh my God.
They gave that up, and we did the Disney titles for a few years. But after it was over, I was kicking around for something to do, and the president of Sierra said, soft porn was a huge hit. Back in the day, in 81,
81.
Apple had sold 100,000 computers.
Yes.
Soft porn had sold 25,000 copies.
Oh my God.
And everybody I knew had a pirated version.
Oh.
So it was on just about 100%
It was everywhere.
everywhere. Everybody had a copy.
Oh.
And so it was very successful. And Ken said, why don't we bring it up to date and put it with our new interpreter and give it color graphics and because it was text only.
It's the text game.
Just text. Put graphics with it and music and everything. Okay, I'll check it out. So I hadn't played it in 5-6 years, I guess, something like that. And I went home and I came back to report to him. And I said, oh, God, Ken, this game is so out of touch. It should be wearing a leisure suit. And he laughed, and I thought, oh, leisure suits are funny. And so
that's why it started.
I said the only way I could make a version of this game is if you'd let me make fun of it. If I made a comedy, I think I could do it. But this, you got to remember, in 1986, this was the height of the AIDS epidemic. People were dying and nobody knew why.
Yeah.
And suddenly loose sex and everything was not very safe. Well, and also it was frightening. I mean, guys were scared as hell. You don't know what's going on or what.
What's going on?
And so I said, well, let me make fun of this guy and make him the butt of the jokes. And so that's what we did.
And who is Larry? So a lot of people say it's you.
No, I'm the narrator.
I understand, but it's
In
based
the
on
game,
you.
yes. My voice is the narrator's voice,
Yes,
and I make fun of Larry. Larry's the butt of my jokes. So I just thought it was easier. I didn't know how to do comedy in a video game. Nobody had done it. There wasn't anything. And so how do you do that? How do you make it funny? And so what I did was create a guy who was a loser instead of a hero.
Yes.
And that one that I could make fun of and make, but I did a weird thing which seemed to have worked. I kept talking about him in the first person. So like it was you, the player.
Yes.
Instead of saying Larry goes over there and does this thing,
Exactly.
I would always say, you do this.
You do that.
You open the
Yeah.
door.
Exactly.
You pick up the torch. You take the rose. And it was you, the player. But I kept insulting you. I kept putting you down and things. So it's amazing the game actually worked. But I think the reason it did was because people liked the character in spite of himself.
Exactly, and it was a new thing.
Yeah,
because,
well, it was
because
different,
games
yeah.
were about war and space shooters.
Swords and sandals.
Yeah, exactly. Heroes.
Or space.
Yes,
Yeah.
no comedy at all.
No,
exactly.
No.
Okay, so I would like to talk to you about, you did an auction.
Auction, yes.
Yeah, with the code of the original Larry.
Well, I
floppy.
did for a few minutes.
For a few minutes, what happened? What happened?
Well,
You received a
I had
call?
some fans that came to my house to shoot some video.
Yeah.
And we started going through my old collection of floppy disks.
Yeah.
And they got all excited because I still had all the original source code for
Yes.
every project I've done. And they said, "Oh my God, this should be shared. People should know about this." And
You
I
keep
said,
all the projects you did? You keep
everyone,
all-
everyone, yeah.
Wow.
Because I was not an employee of Sierra.
You must have a lot of floppy disks.
I do. Yeah, I got a wall.
Go.
And I was not an employee. I was an outside contractor, so I was responsible for keeping my own backups and my own copies and things. So I said, I don't think anybody who would want old floppy disks, from 30 years ago. And they said, well, you should put them on eBay and see if anybody wants them. And boy, within hours, the price got up to $10,000 or something. And my work was done as a work for hire, and the intellectual property went to Sierra. Then I didn't own any of the IP. And so Activision he wrote me a letter and said a cease and desist, and said you might have some of our stuff on there, and if you sell them, we'll sue you. And I said,
and that was the end of it.
And I won't sell them. So I didn't. Yeah, they're still on my shelf. They're up there on that shelf, right?
Okay, so and finally, what can you tell me about the never released Larry 4? We went from 3 to 5.
Okay, I'm gonna have to.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay.
Now you know.
Okay, well, sir, although it was an honor to meet you. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thanks to everyone for buying my games over the years. And if you didn't buy them, thanks for playing them.
Okay, I understand. You can download them.
I think a lot of people downloaded them.
Yeah, or they get it in another way.
But I would rather have people download them and me not get paid, but have the games played, than to have them never be seen.
Yeah, because it's really sad to make something and nobody knows.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very sad for years after after I left Sierra. They locked the games up, and nobody could buy them. So people would write me and say, "Where can I buy a copy of this?"
I want to buy that.
I'd say, "Go download it from a pirate site."
you yourself told the people to download your own game.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow, what a crazy situation.
I know, isn't that crazy? So at least now you can go to GOG, Good Old Games, and download them all there. So for like 10 years of my life, for like $2, I think, or something, $4, I don't know.
So download Mr. Lowe games.
Sure.
Do that.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thanks.